Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7:30 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, June 16, 2015, in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business to come properly before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Friday, June 12, 2015, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education, located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, the Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap into westfieldandpatch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Dana, could we do a roll call?
Rich Matesic.
Here.
Lucy Biegler.
Here.
Mark Friedman.
Here.
Brendan Galligan. Chris Langhart.
Here.
Ginny Lights.
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg.
Here.
Peggy Oster.
Here.
Mitch Slater.
All right, Chris, could you lead us in the flag salute?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, announcements. Chris, anything down your end?
Congratulations to Westfield High School graduating senior Jameson Mayer, who achieved a gold medal on the National Latin exam for 4 consecutive years. Jameson also won the Gold Award on the National Spanish exam in his junior year. He is a member of the National Honor Society and the National Spanish Honor Society. Jameson also excels at athletics and has been the winner for 4 consecutive years of the Coach's Award for Swimming. So congratulations, very impressive.
Thank you.
Best wishes to the 16 retiring staff members who were honored at the Westfield School District's annual gala on June 4th. And thank you to the 9 honorees who have reached the 25-year mark of service to the district. We appreciate this remarkable dedication, which is at the center of Westfield's tradition of excellence. And so we wish our retiring staff members well, and we hope our 25 years who are staying with us are enthused about the next 25.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. We'd like to send congratulations to the latest perfect scorers on the ACT, Felicia Murmur, who achieved a perfect score in mathematics, reading, and science, Anthony Pericolo, who scored the highest score possible in English, and Madeline Levy, whose April ACT in reading scored top the charts.
Okay, and Stephen DeMaria, a freshman at Westfield High School, will get the opportunity that young sports fans dream of when he steps in as Kid CEO for the Somerset Patriots Baseball Club this summer. Stephen was selected as one of 6 finalists out of several hundred applicants for this position. The speech that he presented at the ballpark sealed the deal, with the Patriots being very impressed with Stephen and his persuasive remarks attesting to his ability to fill the Kid CEO position. The Kid CEO program will give Stephen a look at ballpark operations firsthand. He will also be able to sit in on staff meetings and is encouraged to keep a journal describing his experiences, which will in turn be posted on the team's website. We know that this Westfield High School schooler will have a very interesting summer. Very awesome. Good job. It's cool.
I think I like that.
I did too.
This is for the last day of school for all students will be Tuesday, June 23rd. 4-hour sessions will be held Monday, June 22nd, and Tuesday, June 23rd for all grades. A staff in-service day is planned for Wednesday, June 24th. Westfield High School's graduation will take place at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, June 23rd at Kaler Stadium, weather permitting. If an indoor ceremony is necessary, it will be held in the Westfield Armory. We wish all of our graduating seniors many more years of cherished friendships and valuable life experiences.
Thank you.
I have another announcement from the high school. Students in the Westfield High School Humanities class turned their study of To Kill a Mockingbird into multiple projects this year. Students created films revolving around a character they created based only on knowing the shoes the person wore. The point of the film was to demonstrate empathy, the idea that, as Atticus Finch advised his daughter Scout, you don't really know someone until you walk in their shoes. The final piece of this project was to take informed action and to have the students learn about the impact they could have by assisting others in need. Accordingly, the class invited Mission Haiti Helping Kids, a nonprofit organization, to speak to the class about the work this organization is doing to help the student children in Haiti. As a result, the Humanities class created fundraisers for which could purchase school shoes for the children supported by this group. The effort doubled when former Roosevelt students made a presentation to Miss Connolly's 8th grade class. The combined efforts raised close to $1,300. This is the second year in which Westfield has supported this organization. And according to social studies teacher Kim Legan, it is very powerful for our students to witness exactly how much they can impact the lives of people who are not as fortunate as we are. That's all.
Actually, for my announcement, I'd like to go up to the podium. I'd like to ask Ann Hinman to come up and join me. Thank you. So tonight, I'd like to honor Ann Hinman and wish her well as she retires from the Westfield Schools after 15 years of service. Ann was inadvertently overlooked at the gala, and so tonight I'm very glad to be able to try to make up for that oversight. Ann has worked for Westfield for 15 years in Franklin, McKinley, and Washington schools. She began as a lunch aide and has worked as a paraprofessional and has continued her assistance to students throughout all those years. She's worked with students at a number of different grades and has been helpful and cooperative with their classroom teachers. The teacher of her current student has said that no matter what the need the child has had, Ann has always worked hard to reach each and every need and has always kept the best interest of the child in mind. She constantly comes up with ideas and strategies to support the student. And this think-out-of-the-box mentality has truly benefited the students she's worked with. In her retirement letter, one of my favorites actually, Ann said that she has enjoyed 15 years of wonderful smiles from her students and that she has felt joy in making a difference in a child's life. So Ann, we'd like to thank you for your service and commitment to Westfield students. And we wish you all the best in the future. Thank you so much.
All right, I have one additional announcement that I'd like to also make from the podium. Tonight, we have with us Jorge Ledesma, who will be graduating from Westfield High School in exactly 1 week. Congratulations. He is here with us this evening because he rose to National Merit Finalist status this spring, joining a nationwide pool of finalists representing less than 1% of U.S. high school seniors. And on behalf of the Westfield Board of Education, I have the pleasure of presenting you with a certificate of accomplishment, if you'd please come up. Congratulations. If I could just read this. The Board of Education of Westfield, New Jersey congratulates Jorge Ledesma, 2015 National Merit Winner, 2015 Presidential Scholar, officially recognized at the June 16, 2015 Westfield Board of Education meeting. And if I may say just a few words. We have heard Jorge's name announced at several of our meetings. That's no secret. And we now have the opportunity to congratulate him in person. Most recently, we were informed of Jorge being named a Presidential Scholar. He also has earned perfect scores in math, reading, writing, physics, and Math 2 on the SAT, which are widely used for admission criteria to colleges. Since entering Westfield High School, he has taken 11 advanced placement classes. He is a National Merit Scholarship finalist, has won several Merck Science Awards for achievement in biology and physics, and has been recognized by one of the most prestigious writing institutions in the country, the Scholastic Arts and Writing Awards, as one of the top young writers in the country. He is a member of the award-winning Model UN and Youth and Government clubs. Most recently, he served as one of 7 elected officers from Westfield High School at the Youth and Government Club, and was selected to participate in the Council for National Affairs in North Carolina this summer. Jorge is a familiar and welcoming sight at Children's Specialized Hospital, where he volunteers as a mentor. Jorge will bring his advocacy for disabled rights and his passion for learning to Harvard University this fall, and we wish you much success in all of your future endeavors. Congratulations. I'd like to ask Peter Renwick just to please come up and say a few words.
Yes, you can stay.
You can stay.
Good evening, everyone. I could not be more proud to have the opportunity to say a few words about this fine young man, and as much as we can talk about all of his accolades and all the wonderful things that he's accomplished, in the end, he is just that. He is a fine young man, a caring young man, and we could not ask for a better representative of Westfield High School and Westfield as he leaves us and goes to Harvard, where I know he will stir it up and continue to do all the wonderful things that he does, because he is passionate about making a difference. He's passionate about bringing about awareness, bringing about change, about doing the right thing, and then off into the world. I have told Jorge, and I've had many conversations with others who are excited about what this young man will do in the future. And again, he's a wonderful, wonderful representative of our school and our community. This time of year, I'm truly blessed to have the opportunity to get to know so many of our students through interviews and scholarship applications and conversations as they get ready to graduate and go off to college. I had the opportunity to do so with Jorge. I've also gotten to know his mom pretty well, who you saw just come up, and who is also, I see where Jorge gets his passion and his love of life and the close relationship that they have. And I walked away from that interview, that conversation, just knowing, and it's a cliche we all hear, that, you know, we're in the hands of our youth, knowing that we are in good hands with Jorge and his friends, and he has just a wonderful group of friends that have challenged each other, and they're risen to the top of their class. I've already talked with several of them about what their plans are moving forward and how they're going to collaborate on different projects. We're going to know Jorge. The world will get to know Jorge, and we can all be proud of the accomplishments that he's achieved. There's so much that's written here, but again, so much more with the quality and the caliber of the young man. So I'm proud of you. We're all proud of you, and congratulations for all that you've accomplished. Last week, I had the honor to talk about the value of teaching and how in this time of ever-changing technology and confusing world of social media, the value of good teaching. And I went back to our final faculty meeting, and I referenced that the 4 that were honored here last week were a representative group of the quality of educators that we have at Westfield High School. I'm certain, I've talked with Jorge, that he is a product of Westfield schools and a product of those educators. But I think we all know, and I believe I've had a conversation with a number of people in this room, and certainly many, many others who've talked about the fact that they owe so much of their quality experiences and the quality of their life to an educator or to a counselor or to somebody that took the time to get to know them and be there for them. And last week, Ms. McLaughlin talked about that value. She received the Above and Beyond Award. And tonight, we have Mr. Scipione, Skip to the kids, here to talk a little bit about Jorge, but I'm going to talk a little bit about Mr. Scipione. When I spoke with Jorge about why he had chosen Mr. Scipione as a mentor and the gentleman that will join him when they go to Washington, D.C., and we're proud of Mr. Scipione for that, he talked about the fact that when he was in Mr. Scipione's class, he felt like he was in a class with a family, that Mr. Scipione promoted that type of culture in the classroom, that he challenged the students, but that, and I quote, he cared for them. And that made all the difference. And then ultimately, Mr. Scipione was a father figure to Jorge. That cannot be overstated or understated. The value of an educator that takes the time to let their students know that they care, that they want the best for them, they want them to succeed, and they challenge them is truly the mark of a great educator. And so I'm very proud to introduce a great educator, someone that cares about his kids, that has them prepared for the AP exams, but also prepared for life. Jorge is just one example. And right now I'm very honored to introduce Mr. Scipione to say a few words.
So today, as I was giving one of my exams, I was said that I was probably gonna have to say something. So I apologize for the paper, but it's kind of last minute. But over the past 17 years here at Westfield, I've seen many students. Jorge is one of the brightest and most tenacious that I have had the pleasure of instructing. In our many discussions after school, I have gotten to know Jorge not only as a great student, but also as a friend. He is an individual wanting to effect change to make the world a better place for all to enjoy. It will be sad to see Jorge leave our community for the pursuit of a fruitful education at Harvard next year, but I wish him the best. I congratulate him on receiving the Presidential Scholars Award, and I couldn't think of a more deserving individual.
Thank you for this opportunity. Congratulations, Jorge, most deserving. Have a good rest of the night.
All right. I will then recognize the public for agenda items only. All right. Seeing no one come to the podium, I'll ask the board to approve the minutes of the board meeting held on June 9, 2015, and the private minutes of June 9, 2015. Could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brendan. Any questions or comments on the minutes? All those in favor?
I need
Any,
to
one abstention, Lucy? Any other abstentions? I abstain? Check, okay. Minutes are passed. Personnel, Mark.
I'd like the board to consider personnel items 1 through 54, and for everybody, there was an addendum at your desk that added some items there. Any, can I get a second? Ginny, thank you. Any questions or comments? Nobody? Okay. Dana, please.
Rich Matsesik.
Yes.
Lucy Biegler.
Yes.
Mark Friedman.
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Chris Langhart.
Yes.
Ginny Lights.
Still looking. Yes.
Gretchen Olick.
Yes.
Peggy Ashford.
Yes, with an abstention to number 23.
Anything else, Mark?
No, sir.
All right, facilities. Tonight, we have a presentation on solar. As I mentioned at the last meeting, the Facilities Committee has begun to look at the opportunity of solar. I should say relook. We looked at solar quite extensively 3 or 4 years ago and concluded after much thought and looking that with the condition of our roofs at that time, we couldn't possibly put solar panels on the roof that would be there for, I believe, 15 years. the roofs just wouldn't make it that long. So with all new roofs, it is a prudent time to relook at solar. We've asked our architect, George Doherty, to help us through that process. Dana, if you want to make any comments, or just move into George's presentation.
Yeah, we can move into George. Just what we're talking about tonight is a purchase power agreement, which George will talk about a little bit. But this is where a company would come in and actually install the solar power and then sell power back to us at a reduced rate.
Right.
So the outlay of money on the board's part would be very minimal just to pay for the design of and going out to bid. George will get into that in more detail, but I just wanted to make sure that was clear before we start the presentation.
Thank you. All right.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thanks for having me back again.
Hey, George, could you just remind everybody your name and your firm?
Sure. George Doherty. I'm a principal with FDHD Architects, Freytag Weiss, Hopkins Doherty. We've been very fortunate to work with the Board of Education in Westfield for a long time, and we're very, very pleased with that relationship and deep gratitude as well. And I wanted to just come tonight and talk a little bit about solar. I was asked to come here and speak specifically about solar being procured by a methodology that is permitted in the state of New Jersey called a power purchase agreement, but as Dana touched upon before. But before I mention that, and I guess we have a clicker.
I have it here.
Oh, you have it? Yeah, just the next slide. So why solar now? So solar is great in New Jersey. New Jersey is still a very, very good state for solar, still one of the best states in the country. And recently, there have been some legislative acts that have led to the state committing more to solar. There has been a greatly reduced installation cost for solar, much more so even than 4 or 5 years ago when you went back and Westfield first looked at installing solar, and we did many, many projects back then. And right now, solar is much cheaper to install. We're seeing a rising rate for electricity costs, according to the Energy Information Agency, the EIA. In general, the trend is for an upward cost of electricity, including New Jersey. We're seeing a better efficiency in panels, higher outputs, better technology in general for all of the equipment. And in Westfield particularly, we have brand new roofs, which are perfect for mounting solar, many of the areas. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And we also have an added initiative in light of Hurricane Sandy and other storms New Jersey has had for grid resiliency, right? To add power to the grid using alternative energy and renewable energy sources. Dana? So, we're looking at a power purchase agreement, otherwise known as a PPA. And in New Jersey, there are regulations that govern PPAs. It is a process that is done by pre-qualified firms, according to the New Jersey Department of Treasury. It is a form of competitive contracting. It is a delegated design process. You basically go out, you tell the bidders what you'd like to do, and they come back with a responsive proposal to explain to you how they're going to go about doing that, within certain parameters and constraints. The basis of a PPA is the solar that's generated, the power that's generated by the solar, is sold back to the customer at a reduced rate. And by law, that rate must be less than what you pay the utility. Okay? So a PPA has a limit of a 15-year term. There are a variety of options at the end of the term of the PPA, including removing the system, turning the system over to the owner. There are verification processes that the BPU requires us to use. There's worksheets and procedures that have to be used. And there are also system maintenance and repair requirements that are incorporated into the PPA. So the owner does not have to deal with system maintenance or installation. That's all taken care of by the company that does the PPA. So there are two components basically for the costs associated with a PPA. The first component, which is done prior to going out to bid, the upfront cost, is a due diligence process, which the state and the BPU mandate be done before a PPA bid can be solicited, okay? So there are design criteria, there are things like general system sizes. You have to look at the surfaces you're going to put the solar on, the roofs. In this case, we won't be doing any ground mount systems in Westfield. Everything will be on the roof. We have to look at agency requirements. There's planning board things that have to be done. Department of Education submissions have to be made. It's a public school district. And we have to do an RFP. There's a draft form of a request for proposal that has to follow a certain format, okay? So those things have to be done up front. We have to look at the electrical service in the building, see if anything needs to be done to enhance those, where we're going to connect the system, where we're going to put the equipment associated with the system. So all those things are done up front, and that's a fee of $17,600. Most of that goes for engineering. Most of that goes for engineering. And the Phase 2 built-in costs are actually part of the PPA. And those costs include the things listed here, the system engineering. Most of the engineering is done after the PPA has been awarded, because the people installing it are the ones who are going to engineer the system, because they're going to install a system that obviously they feel is the best system to be done to meet the requirements of the project. Construction permits, again, system maintenance and repairs, documentation support, and the actual construction procedure itself, okay? So we'll talk a little bit about Westfield specifically. These are just some images of some solar, overview of a solar installation our firm did. A kiosk in the center. An important component of solar actually is the kiosk, the educational component of the solar. And a close-up of a ballasted system. And this is how they're installed on the roof. This is one type of system. That's called a racking system that the panels are attached to. And you see those blocks, that's the ballast that holds the panels down on the roof. There's no physical penetrations of the panels or the racking system into the roof. So the high school, 265 kilowatts. I want to state that these are preliminary numbers. They're based on aerials and shading analysis and things like that were done. But right now, approximately 265 kilowatts of electricity can be generated on Westfield High School. Next. Edison.
George, so the red is where panels would go?
I'm sorry, yes. The shaded red areas are where the panels would go, yes. Okay, there's a little, they're all the same, even though they look slightly different in the color shading. Over at Edison Intermediate School, 250 kilowatts. Roosevelt, 130 kilowatts. Tamaqua, 90. And these numbers are slightly different than the plans, and there's a reason for that. And what we're trying to do is get to 900 kilowatts, so we bumped them up a little bit. And again, these are preliminary numbers, but our goal is to achieve 900 kilowatts, which we should be able to do. And that's the summation of the individual systems at the schools that have been selected. And there are other buildings, we'll talk about those as well. But we want to talk about first the savings. So what does 900 kilowatts of electricity generated get for us? Well, it's converted to kilowatt hours, first of all, but between $89,000 and $144,000 a year in potential electricity cost savings, okay? And there's a range, and we could talk a little bit more about why there's a range. And the reason there's a range is because the information is very preliminary right now, okay? So these are insufficient roof areas. With a PPA, it's important that we try to grab large, open areas. We don't want to have a lot of changes in roof surfaces. We don't want to have a lot of small roof surfaces we have to jam panels onto. We want to pick the largest roofs and do the most straightforward installations that we can. So insufficient roof areas at those buildings. And then we have to take a closer look at Wilson, Franklin, and Washington School to see if maybe we can put some solar on those as well. Once you start getting below 100 kilowatts, 90 kilowatts, you really need to take a closer look. So, schedule.
Basic cost for installation.
So a schedule, we'll start and finish the due diligence work. We have to survey, obviously, all of the buildings, electrical services and other areas by the end of September, 9/25, advertise around October 1st, award in November. Then we're going to have to do a bunch of pre-construction activities, and that includes some approval processes that have to be done with the BPU. There's some paperwork that has to be filled out. Some of that is somewhat time-consuming. The engineering has to be done, and of course, planning board and other things, agency submissions that have to be dealt with, right? Plan review, things like that. So we may not start construction until around May of 2016 and continue through next summer, okay, August of 2016. Okay, that's it in a nutshell. Yes.
George, thanks.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that everybody's clear, the savings that you put up there are annual savings.
Annual savings,
Right.
yes. Yes.
So if you had a 15-year deal,
15 times.
15 times.
Right.
Right, depending upon how electrical, would the negotiated price of the solar change over time, or would it be locked in over 15 years?
So there's an escalator that's put on every year. It's generally around 2 to 3%, because the idea is that they're going to raise the price of electricity that the system generates, following along with what the utility charges you. So the escalator is determined by the state BPU, really, in the calculations that are done. But about 3%, 2 to 3%. Yes. Right.
Oh, so
Lucy,
there,
yes.
there was a range, George,
Yes.
from 89 to 144. You said it was preliminary. So what would make the savings greater or less, depending on the preliminary?
Yeah. So a number of things. One would be how complicated the infrastructure is for the solar. So how much work do we have to do to the existing electrical service? You know, how far do we have to run conduits? You know, where do we have to put the inverter, for example? You know, how broken up is the system? You know, do we have to put arrays over here and arrays over here and then connect them together? Anything that causes us to have to run extra wire or, you know, spread things apart, you know, will have an influence.
George, isn't it also the market right now for the solar renewable energy credits, which is what the company is able to sell? That the company that installs the panels are able to sell those SRECs, as they're called, and right now the market for them is actually pretty good, which
Right.
is why we want to move forward with this.
Right.
Before the market for that goes down, as more people put solar on, because we get locked into a contract that will
Right.
guarantee us savings. So while they're still selling at a higher rate, we'd like to lock into that.
So, right, there's the SRECs, there's the, you know, there's a commodity market associated with the long-term sale of electricity, okay, and net metering, and, you know, sort of some, you know, guessing in terms of what the regulations are going to be like, you know, 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years from now. There's a lot of speculative things involved in PPAs that really those folks have the most knowledge about, and that could certainly have an influence on that savings number, sure. And you have something?
In the last couple of years, the efficiency of solar's gone up significantly.
Yes.
Do you have the ability to set minimum standards for efficiency?
Sure. So there are industry standards for solar panels, and we certainly would, those would be specified.
Right.
We typically pick a range of panels that all have a certain efficiency and a certain listing associated with them.
Right.
And California, you know, does all of the testing for inverters and solar panels, the Energy Agency, and those panels are all certified. So
Excellent.
anything we pick would be certified.
Yeah.
And
I
they
don't-
have to be, by the way, in order to be approved for use in a PPA.
Right. Don't want to see the whole roof filled up with inefficient
Oh,
solar
no, no,
cells.
no. And again, you know, everything's listed, and those things are, you know, checked by the BPU when the project's submitted for approval.
Right.
Can you just explain the escalator price again? Is that escalator based on the current price of electricity, or is that based off the initial fixed rate that we're paying for electricity?
So it's 3% annually, so it's the first year, fixed cost,
Mhm.
next year, 3%, then 3% again, so that keeps going up.
Right.
Each year, 3% on 3%.
But we're always paying less than the market rate.
You
right?
have to,
Exactly.
by regulation, you always have to pay less.
Mhm.
So that escalator, and that's a permitted number really, and the BPU, again, they pretty well set that based on the indexes, they keep track of that, right? And you always have to do better than the actual cost. And that rate is guaranteed with that escalator, so if something happens, that PPA provider is still on the hook for that full amount.
What has electricity been rising, generally speaking?
Well, it varies from year to year between 1% and 5%. I mean, that's what we've been seeing. Lately, there's been an upward trend. It's been about 3%, but it does actually average about 3% a year if you take the trends over, you know, a period of time.
And what would be roughly the date that we would lock in, I guess, sign an RFP?
Well, the day you open your bids, that in your bid, that price is actually established.
So it was
So,
November, roughly.
yes, November, right, when we open the contracts. They open the bids for the contracts.
So we're going off 3%, I guess it's conceivable the numbers could condense pretty much so that we were paying slightly under the market rate. Now, that's going to affect the savings we get out of this? Is that the general premise of that?
Well, the way they require us to do the calculation as renewable energy worksheets that are filled out at the time that the bids are accepted. That escalator is built in. Now, can it vary from year to year? Can the price of electricity one year go up less, and then your escalator is still 3%? Yeah, from a year-to-year basis, it could vary, I would say. You know, I think you have to look at the savings over the course of the entire 15 years. You know, because each year there could be some variations.
Right.
It's theoretically possible, I would say, for one year to be higher and the next year to be lower.
Yeah.
I could see that happening. But it still always should be better than what you would pay anyway for
Right.
that electricity, buying it from the utility.
I know we get electricity, I believe, through cooperative arrangement, right?
We, yes, we do.
So
But it's,
that contract wouldn't impede moving to solar, right?
no. I mean, we would just be using less of
You
that.
use less,
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You would get 2 bills each month. You'd get one bill from the solar company, which is for the solar electricity, and you get your bill from PSE&G for an amount reduced by what your solar produces. So, and right now you're paying about 17 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity. That's what it works out to.
So if we got to 900 kilowatt hours, what percentage of our total electric need does that support?
So I haven't done that number yet. I'll have to check that. We'll do that as part of the process, comparing that to your current electric savings. We actually do have your electric, let me just see, your electric cost based on the solar size, which is a different question, would be $188,700 based on 17 cents for what the solar would produce if you were buying that same electricity from public service. But it represents typically somewhere between 10, 15% sometimes.
So you're still
of your
buying the
overall.
balance in
You
the
are.
normal course, you're
You
just
are.
now doing 10 or 15% through solar
Yes.
at a lower cost.
At a lower cost,
Right.
right.
Okay. And then last question for me. What's the potential risk for us? You know, what could go wrong for us?
Well, obviously, things can always go wrong. As far as other than physical damage and the loss of the use of the system over a period of time, because if the system breaks, the company is responsible to fix it, but they're not responsible for the lost revenue during that time. I would say that's one risk you would take.
So that's an opportunity
But
cost, right?
that's what that is. Yeah, right. And as far as day-to-day or ongoing or anything like that, you have no risk there because all that risk is assumed by the PPA provider.
And these PPA providers, are they private organizations?
Private organizations, yes.
Right. So how do we evaluate the what's the right word? The viability,
Yeah.
the viability of these guys. You know, we go through an effort, perhaps not at our cost, but we go through an effort of putting all these solar panels on top of our roofs, and then 1 year, 2 years, somewhere along the road, these guys go out of business. Now what happens?
Well, if they go out of business, it's theoretically possible that, you know, you would be left with a system that has nobody to run it. And there would have to be some type of a takeover done on the system, some kind of arrangements made for someone to take over your system. You know, they would still own it and they would still have an obligation, you know, to at least remove it from the building. But they would be in default on the contract that they have with you. So I've never had that happen before. I don't know what would really happen. But as far as the qualifications go, and this is the thing, for a PPA, the companies that are going to submit the bids are all backed up by strong solar industry, marketing companies, and financial companies who do a lot of these types of installations and have installations all over the place. So you're going to get the people who are, this is their business. And they submit financial information at that time, financial statements that can be looked at by a financial advisor. They have ratings, all of these companies have ratings, and you know, you base it on information submitted with the proposal.
Just for the facilities committee, I would imagine that as we get the contract state, we've got a couple of lawyers, I guess, take a look at this and understand what our downside would be if one of these guys went out of, you know, if our guy went out of business, you know, are we left with, you know, something up there that now we're obligated to get rid of, or, you know, what happens?
Yeah, we did have a quick conversation about that. I think one of the related concerns was if the solar were to shut down for some reason, the company goes out of business, they stop servicing it, we just flip back to PSE&G, right?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
there's no-
Oh, yeah, you
there's
shut
no
it off.
Impact
Right.
on the operations, it's just the cost, I guess, the downside would be the cost of removing that stuff from the roof.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
Wouldn't we want some kind of a default protection within the RFP?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mark's pointing out a worst case, so.
Well,
somebody goes-
that's part of the worst case.
So yes, that's an option. You could get a bond over that time, okay? We pay for that obviously in the cost of the project, so that's something you have to look at. We could certainly talk to, we have attorneys, by the way, a couple of attorneys I've worked with on other RFPs. Refer them your way if you like, and speak with them about that specifically.
Two things. One, just on that thread, if the company were to default, why would it be in our financial interest to remove the solar panels? Just let it keep running until it stops working. They could come remove them if they want.
Well, yeah, I would agree. Well, I mean, first of all, if they're gonna go belly up,
Yeah.
you're not gonna get bills anymore every month for what the system is
Right.
producing, right? So you'll have a solar system on your roof that's functional unless something happens to it. And, and in your contract, you take possession of that system, if they default, right? So, those are the options you can look at. There are default options in the RFP contract.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's a power purchase agreement that the board will have to execute, which has certain mandated language in it, and there are default clauses in there.
And then second, in the summer and on Saturdays when we're not using the buildings, would the PSE&G meter roll backwards, or is that just?
Yeah, it's conceivable that the meter could spin backwards. Right. It's called net metering, so
Right.
a meter can spin backwards. That is conceivable.
Sound like rolling back my abdomen.
Well, it's not actually spinning backwards. You have two meters and they offset each other. But
I guess for me, the highest risk would be if there were a windfall and utility costs, electric costs dropped significantly and we were paying more than the market.
Well, anything's possible. I don't think that's going to happen. I doubt electricity is going to drop that low, and it doesn't. I've never heard anyone say that was ever going to happen.
Well.
But anything's possible. I mean, I
didn't think
suppose
Sandy
that
would
could happen,
either.
but I would think the risk of that is small.
Yeah,
I would
know.
think.
I'm just-
Yeah, but I mean, I understand there is some risk with the PPA. It's not just like there is with everything else. There's risk and rewards with everything. So, but in this case, I think the rewards are going to outweigh the risks.
Thank you.
At the end of 15 years, we own the solar.
Well, you have some options. You can have them. You can own it. You can have them remove the system, okay, and or you can continue to the PPA agreement with the company at some other negotiated terms. Basically, the end of term options are regulated by the law. Okay, so those are the three.
What's the useful life of those systems?
Oh, far longer than 15 years. Yeah, those components are all 15-year components. Inverters, the inverters are the one with the shortest life. When we first started doing this, they were 5 years, then they were 10. Now we're seeing 12 to 15, even 20 years on inverters. So technologies have improved greatly.
But they get more efficient as time goes on. So is the 15 years term is a choice of ours, or you have to, when you do this, you have to have a 15-year term?
That's the law, 15 years. That's the term of a PPA. Someone decided a long time ago that's how everyone benefits the most over this 15-year term. And the life cycle of the equipment, I'm sure, was taken into consideration.
I would agree that technology advance is part of that equation.
Yeah, because you would think that the efficiency is somewhere, 5 years from now, the efficiency, we're going to be sitting there with machinery that's not nearly as efficient as what new stuff would be out
Right.
there.
Right. And people with 5-year-old solar systems are looking at obsolete equipment now, but it still performs.
Right.
Still performs.
Any
So
other
what
questions?
are we approving anything tonight?
You're approving the applications to the state, so we can
17.6.
start the process, to get the approvals from the state.
Right. Yep. In
Great.
preparation, we took some steps.
Anyone else? George, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
That is it for facilities, long-range planning. Jenny?
There's no report, but I would like to remind Dr. Dolan that the board would like to see the comments that were part of the survey.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Policies, Lucy?
Okey-dokey. I would like to have the board consider policy number 2432, school-sponsored publications in all media for first reading. Can I have a second? Jenny? any questions? Dana?
Rich Matesic,
Yes.
Lucy Biegler,
Yes.
Mark Friedman,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Chris Langhart.
Yes.
Ginny Lights.
Yes.
Gretchen Olin,
Yes.
Peggy Oster.
Yes.
And I would like to have the board consider policy numbers 1214, 3214, 4214, all consisting of conflict of interest with different staffing members, and 5330, administration of medication, and 5500, conduct discipline and code of conduct for second reading. We've got over these. Can I have a second, Jenny? Any questions on those? Okay, Dana?
Rich Matesic,
Yes.
Lucy Biegler,
Yes.
Mark Friedman,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Chris Langhart.
Yes.
Ginny Lights,
Yes.
Gretchen Olin,
Yes.
Peggy Oster.
Yes.
Okay, and I'd also like to have the board consider approving the following district and board goals that were attached.
Second.
Gretchen. Any questions on those? Ginny?
Yes. District goals. 1, fund and hire alumni coordinator for the district. So this is much more narrow than I remember the conversation that we had at our workshop. Could I have an explanation?
I wasn't.
What did you remember?
It's exactly, I mean, it's what I recall the conversation being, and it's what I wrote down. I think it agreed with Dr. Dolan's notes from that
It
evening
did.
as well.
We had started that night with a broader topic, and this was one of the topics under it, but then my memory was it was then refined to this. We didn't start with this, but this is where we ended up.
And so you think that, does the board think that we're happy with a district goal that limits the focus to an alumni coordinator as opposed to a broader development coordinator that would initially concentrate on alumni fundraising
I
and
thought of
alumni
that.
coordination?
I thought of that it could be broader to be development. That wasn't my memory of the discussion, so I didn't change it, but I was wondering, I think
Well, I'd like that discussion here.
yeah, that's fine.
Well, didn't we talk about that and say that we wanted to have not too broad so that we got lost in what we were trying to accomplish and we wanted to narrow the focus a little
I
bit?
don't remember that, but you may remember that.
Can you re-explain what your question is? Because I wasn't here at the workshop. So you're saying that you wanted what? You would rather it
I
be
would
broader
rather
in what
see-
sense?
Yeah, I would rather see funding and hiring a director of development initially concentrating on district alumni.
So, sorry, I guess I assumed that that function was subsumed in this and looked at this as an initial starting point. This is not a one-year position. This is ongoing. So what this person will do will broaden over time. I mean, unless, were you,
I think we need to understand what the intent is. The words should follow. I don't want an alumni coordinator particularly. That to me is not representative of my goal,
So you want a development person who focuses on alumni?
initially.
It's just, to me, it's just words, so
Well-
change the words if that's what we need to do.
Yeah, I think generally the development coordinator is just a bit broader. That's my understanding. So,
I don't want somebody to just collect names and get an alumni database and start some conversation about the fact that alumni are valuable to the school district and, okay, I presented you with a database of alumni. I want someone who has expertise and understanding of fundraising, development ideas, starting initially with focusing on alumni and then having a broader sense, knowing that that after that, there's going to be outreach into corporations, community members, establishing a set of priorities, making us establish priorities for gift giving or development activities versus operating budget funding. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the whole McGilla, starting with.
development fund.
I agree with that.
The whole
That
McGilla.
makes sense. I don't know if it just comes down to wording, but that makes sense.
I mean, I don't think that's just wording, that's a concept. And I don't get that concept out of these words. So, I'm
Ginny,
just
what do
one
you
of
want it
many.
to say? What do you want it to say? I don't think anybody's disagreeing with you.
right, that was part of our conversation.
fund and hire a director of development initially concentrating on district alumni, or on coordinating district alumni.
Could we leave, I don't have a problem with that, but would this is how I was envisioning it. Fund and hire an alumni coordinator for the district, who among other things can serve as a director of development. I was looking at the director of development as one thing this person would do.
And I was looking at the director of development as a director of development, whose one thing that they do, among others, is coordinate.
We're saying the same thing. We can go with your wording, that's fine with me. Fund and hire a
I
director
mean,
of,
I have a broader plan.
I think we all do.
I think we should say what we hope for.
Okay. Did you write that?
I think so. Fund and hire a director of development for the district who initially focuses on alumni. What was it?
Maybe coordinating alumni or.
Developing coordinator, you said.
Coordinating alumni.
It may be the same. I just
No, I think it is.
just want to be very clear
Right.
that we all understand exactly what our expectations are
We talked
at the
about
end of the
it
year
in
when we see what the
concept.
results are.
Right. That's fair.
Fund and hire a director of development who will initially focus on coordinating alumni.
It works for me.
Any other
Everybody
comments or
okay with that?
questions?
Yep.
Number 2, conduct an assessment and review of course offerings in the district. What is the outcome? What do we expect the result of that to be?
I think it depends on what the assessment and review is. I
Do
mean,
we
I
want a
think that-
recommendation?
Do we want a recommendation? I think that it will be specific, that there will be multiple recommendations that will come out of that, or not. I mean, I don't know that we can know what the end game is until we know what we're getting into.
No, I want some kind of outcome. Not only would I want an assessment and a review, but I would like a recommendation. The recommendation could be, we're doing great, this is fine. I recommend we stay with where we are. The recommendation could be reassess the balance of offerings. It could be initiate another study that further, complements what's already been done. But there's got to be something that.
Yeah, I think I would assume that as part of a review, you'd have recommendations, but I'm fine if that word is added to
Yeah,
it, because it would be
Sort of
part of,
evaluation and recommendation.
yeah.
What are some other people's sense
I
of?
agree with the way you worded it, because the assignment is do your homework and turn it in.
Why?
No, you have part A, but if you want to have
assessment and
part
review
B.
unless we're going to come up with some recommendations. So I don't think any of us disagree. Once again, so what you're saying, what you want. So what are the words that you want? How do you want this to read?
Find some kind of outcome. Recommendation and what did I say? A recommendation for? Conduct an assessment, review, and recommendation for course offerings in the district.
Okay.
I mean, part of what has stymied us over the years is the fact that we have not been very specific in the assessment criteria for what our outcome is going to be. What is success? What are the components of it? What does it look like? What are the measurements? Trying to give us a little beef.
Anything needed on goal 3?
Personally speaking, my humble opinion, personally speaking, establishing a process, I thought we already had a process that we were following, but if we're in fact going to tweak it, change it on our strategic plan,
I understand. I actually think, no, part of what we said was we would look and see whether the way we've done it has worked in the past. That doesn't mean we have to do it that way. There are other opportunities for it. So that's why it's written that way.
Okay then.
And representative is plural, right? I mean, you're talking about throughout the town?
Yes.
Or were you talking about one person?
No, representation, I think, should have been the
Okay.
word,
Okay.
I guess.
Just add an S.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So,
All right.
just so we are, the minutes are clear, I would make a motion to amend Lucy's motion with respect to the boards approving the district goals, that goal 1 would read, fund and hire director of development who initially focuses on coordinating alumni. The goal 2 would read, conduct an assessment and review and recommendation for course offerings in the district. And that goal 3, the first bullet point would say, establish committee representatives. So I guess I need a second to my amendment.
I will remove my original second and second your amendment.
Do something
Ready
with
for a
that.
vote?
Right, does anybody, any board goal discussion,
Yeah,
or
do
we're
it.
good?
What's the one?
We talked enough about that last week.
Okay. Rich Matasek?
Yes.
Lucy Biegler?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Chris Langhardt?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Peggy Oster?
Yes.
Okay, and I'd like to have the board consider affirming the superintendent's decision on HIB incidences 15R06, 15E09, and 15E10 for the reasons set forth therein. I have a second, Ginny? Dana?
Rich Matasek?
Yes.
Lucy Biegler?
I need to abstain.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Chris Langhardt?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Peggy Oster?
Yes.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Curriculum, instruction, and programs. Gretchen.
I'd like to ask the board to consider SIP items 1 and 2. Can I have a second? Ginny, thank you. Does anybody have any conversations or questions or comments? Right, Dana?
Rich Matasek?
Yes.
Lucy Biegler?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Chris Langhardt?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Peggy Oster?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Finance, Mark?
Yes. I'd like the board to consider finance items 1 through 38. There were some at your desk that were addendums. Second? Ginny, thanks. One comment, the board would like to accept a gift of $23,271 from the Franklin School PTO to purchase a laptop cart, 2 laptops, a video camera, and a printer for the library. So thanks very much for that. Any other comments or questions? Ginny?
Item number 23. Dr. Weissman, could you please give us a comparison in the next days or week of out-of-district placement plans for the coming school year versus where we were this year? Thank you.
Dana, please?
Rich Matasek?
Yes.
Lucy Biegler?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Chris Langhardt?
I abstain and recuse myself from number 1. Vote yes on all other matters.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Peggy Oster?
Yes.
That's it.
And, excuse me, Mark,
Go
may I
ahead. Yep.
ask for an explanation? I think it's reasonable to ask for an explanation on item number 6, where the district is changing our approach to funding our medical plan. Dana, could you give
Sure.
a review of that?
We have our brokers for our health insurance, our prescription, and our dental have been busy marketing our plan to a number of different companies in order to get us the best price available. What they're recommending and what looks like the best bet for us for next year is to self-insure both our pharmacy and our medical insurance. So what would happen is we would be purchasing stop-loss insurance. So for every employee, there would be a stop of $200,000. So if any individual person or dependent reached $200,000, the insurance policy would kick in. Other than that, we will be self-insuring the plan. So what will happen is instead of us paying a flat premium every month for every employee for whether they have individual coverage or family coverage or whatever, we'll be paying as claims are submitted. And based on what the projections are, we think we will save money doing that. The first year we will have to set up, at the end of the year, we will have to set up a reserve on June 30th of 2016 to cover claims that are incurred but not reported. It's called the IBNR. So what that would be is, as of June 30th, even though the fiscal year is ended, there will be medical claims that we have not yet paid Horizon, who will act as our third-party administrator, but will owe because there are claims related to this year. So we think if there's a little bit of a risk to the district in that we do have a maximum liability. That's also part of the stop-loss insurance. So there's a maximum liability for the year. If we should have a terrible, terrible year, we could actually spend a little bit more than we would by fully insuring. But we don't expect that to happen. From looking at the claims that we've had this year, we think it's an opportunity for the district to save money, and that's where we're heading for next year.
So I think it's important that the board be aware of this and acknowledge all the effort that Dana has gone through with Brown & Brown as our brokers to pay attention to escalating health, medical insurance costs, and the fact that we're doing everything we absolutely possibly can from our point of view to manage the cost and the cost increase of our medical plan. Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you for calling that out. Mark, there was actually one other, it's not couched as a gift, so that you didn't mention the booster project, did you?
I did not.
Let me just call that out, because it's listed as item number 11 as a transfer from maintenance reserve, which is true. It's a $10,000 cost to the district, but it's really in the context of a much larger gift from the boosters with respect to a project that'll be undertaken this summer for over a 3-week period in the main gym, the varsity gym of the high school. And in summary, that project will sand down and refinish the varsity floor. It will remove the padding around the walls and replace those with new padding. They're going to refurbish, to the extent they can, the old padding and put it in gym number 5. They're going to repaint the walls half in blue, half in white. That's actually a very expensive process because of the material, the type of paint they need to use to adhere to that wall. They're going to they're going to clean and rehang all of the banners so that they just look sharp and crisp once again. That is the bulk of that project. They're also going to, in gym number 5, they're going to repair a small part of the floor as part of this, and it's an estimate, but I believe the total project is much closer to $100,000. Our contribution is $10,000. People may remember that last year the boosters did a similar sized project, the locker rooms at Kaler, with a similar cost, and we had committed to contribute $10,000 for each of 3 years. So this is our second of 3 projects that we look forward to. And really just want to thank the boosters and everybody who contributes to that organization, because you do continue to look for enhancements you can make to the district and ways we can partner, and that's really important. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Rich. I think it's very, very important to make mention of that and acknowledge that this is, we are the recipient of a huge fundraising effort, continual fundraising effort by the boosters, as well as our young athletes, scholar athletes who receive over 24 scholarships, if I'm not correct.
Yeah,
I think 26, they said. So this is a concentrated community effort, and we thank the boosters. We thank all those who've contributed to the boosters, and public acknowledgement is a very, very important part of being a good neighbor and a worthy recipient. Thank you very much for your support and your funds.
Anything else, Mark? No. All right. Legislation, Brendan?
No report.
Thank you. Technology Committee, I know Mitch is out sick. I don't believe he left a report.
No.
All right. I'd ask the board to note the notes for the record. I'd then ask the board if there's any unfinished business. Any new business? Any liaison reports? I have one. It's in my capacity as having served the PTSO at the high school this year. So this year I had the honor to serve as the Board of Education representative to the Westfield High School PTSO. It was truly a pleasure for me to work with a group of volunteers whose biggest debate is how we can best benefit our students. It was a wonderful committee to serve on. And in that regard, I'd like to note that the PTSO contributed over $20,000 to the Westfield High School during the past school year. Through many enhancements to the school, including, just as examples, the donation of 2 picnic tables for the courtyard, 5 water bottle filling stations in the hallways, new hand dryers in the bathrooms, new signage outside the gymnasium and auditorium, look for that over the summer, new whiteboards in the music room, new student murals in the hallways, document cameras and graphing calculators for the math department, a new computer for the student council, new Chromebooks for special education classrooms, crime scene supplies for the forensic science classes, push-up monitors for physical education classes, and a contribution toward repairing the clock in the front of the high school that allowed us to get that project completed. These are really wonderful enhancements and improvements to the high school, which often go unnoticed to parents and the community who are not otherwise inside the high school day to day. And I just wanted to call out their hard work and efforts of the PTSO, and we greatly appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bridget.
Any other liaison? All right. I would then recognize the public for questions and/or comments on any topic. Sure. You just state your name and address, please.
Sure. Can I come up here?
Yes.
Okay. Please. Sorry.
Sure. Name's Charles White, 921 Boulevard. Couple things. One is where my family's going to be relocating out of state, actually. And so just first of all, want to express my appreciation for the, I guess, 7 years that my older, she's in 7th grade, who's here, and then I have a younger one who's in 2nd grade. Just want to express my appreciation for the fine education that they've received here at in the Westfield School District. It puts a high bar in terms of what we're looking for in the district we're moving into. We're always probably going to be providing comparisons, like, well, how does this stack up compared to what Westfield was offering, which I think is good to do that, is to be able to say, and also maybe bring some of the things that were quite successful here at Westfield, bring those to a new district that we're moving into, and to try to further what their aims are with their students. So again, I just want to say, with deep gratitude for that. I was born in Westfield, wasn't raised here. I was raised in a neighboring town, but after being here and being exposed to the school district, I find myself wishing that my parents had come, when they returned to this area after being away for a little bit, were able to come back and live here, and I could have gone through grammar school, middle school, and high school here. So heartache on that. But I've really enjoyed having my daughters be here, and it's been a phenomenal experience. So I come here tonight, first of all, just to say gratitude for that. There is a matter, though, I wanted to bring up, and obviously since I'm moving out of district, or moving out of state for that matter, I don't have any vested interest, really, I'm sorry at this point, to be saying what I'm saying for the benefit of my own children. But I think it's worth saying just for the benefit of the children, who are continuing to be here. My daughter here, when she went into 6th grade at Edison, she went through Jefferson and Edison, and she's now finishing up 7th grade in Edison. When she was in 6th grade, she came in and she's very active and very interested in different initiatives. And she came in during her literally from the moment she hit the school steps at Edison, she wanted to start a microfinance club at the school based upon Kiva. Kiva Microfinance is a big, large, it's probably the premier microfinance lending site in the world. And so she went in, she had exposure to that going back to 2nd grade, and had done this thing town-wide, Westfield Youth for Kiva, which is ranked number 7 in the world for youth group lending, has lended, $17,000 over the past 5 years all over the world. I don't know how many hundreds of loans they've made all over the world to different entrepreneurs and so forth. So she wanted to bring the energy of that to Edison. So when she got to Edison, she was referred. I think she approached her social studies teacher because that would be kind of the most, I guess, the logical person to approach about something like that. Who said, "Well, I think it's a great idea," and she. That social studies teacher quickly referred her to one of the teachers at the school at Edison who does a lot of philanthropic activities and sponsors a lot of clubs at the school and for philanthropic activities. And she took it on, embraced it, and and the thing has grown exponentially since then for the past year and a half. That's an example of something working really well in terms of taking a student's initiative and their interest and their passion and being able to match them with the right faculty person who then can take that and nurture and culture it and push it further. And so I just want to commend, Sharon Stone at Edison School for her leadership of the Kiva Microfinance Club at Edison School. So I just want to commend her. And Rebecca's now currently turning over. I'm sorry, I mentioned your name. Sorry. I promised I wouldn't. She's now turning the leadership of this organization over to some of her friends from this past year who were with her in this project. So hopefully they'll carry it on through 8th grade. And the hope is that they'll take it into the high school. In a year from now, when they graduate from Edison, they'll take it into the high school. So. Anyway, that's a great example of something working very well. And I wish that was the end of the story, but it's not. Later in Rebecca's 6th grade year, she had another passion that she wanted to fulfill and for another school initiative at Edison. And she started by doing an interest thing on this particular activity actually about this time last year. And they brought in a Westfield alumni who was doing this particular activity in college, brought him down, and he was kind of like a guest speaker and a guest performer, if you will. And did a phenomenal job, recruited a lot of interest, big buzz over at Edison in early June of last year for this. And I think they signed up like between 15 and 20 kids who are going to be coming back to Edison, who are going to be interested in being involved in this group come September, September 2014. So then when the school year came around, Rebecca was looking for an advisor for this particular group. And because this particular activity is it really kind of it'd be like the equivalent of a science club. Who would you approach to run the science club? Well, you approach the science teachers, obviously. So Rebecca approached the teachers at the school who this is under their expertise. And because these teachers had other commitments, they weren't able to take it on. One had an after-school job, couldn't take it on. Another one, for whatever reason, was busy and so forth. And so, they thought it was a great idea, but they just had other commitments. They were overextended with other activities and so forth. That's fine. What they ended up doing was they ended up recommending people who to take on this activity where it was outside of their expertise. And the people who my daughter ended up working with really didn't have any knowledge. They did their best they could, but they really didn't have any sort of expertise to bring to this particular activity, this particular club, if you will, to help it grow and develop. And so it sort of floundered. And also, the membership started to dwindle as these other students in the school kind of were scratching their head as to why the teachers who are the best qualified to be involved in this activity at the school were not involved in it. And again, like if you're on a science club and the science teachers don't want to have anything to do with it. It's like, students will be like, whoa, this doesn't have this doesn't have institutional support, and so therefore I'm not going to be involved in this. And that's what happened. Membership started to dwindle, and it basically kind of got on life support. Now, I brought this to Matt Bolton's attention, who, I was really quite pained by this. Brought it to his attention and suggested, can you do something about this? Because this is really, it's unfortunate to have a student who has as much energy and enthusiasm about something, have it kind of, have that be wasted. He did some heroics by finding someone, a teacher with the correct qualifications over at Roosevelt, who agreed to come over and be involved in this activity. But by that time, it was too late. That was like November of this past year. And by that time, the membership had basically dwindled to nobody except for Rebecca and one other student. And it basically died. I mean, it just basically died, on the vine or whatever. And so I just got to thinking about, student initiatives and clubs, particularly by middle school or by intermediate school and high school students, are probably one of the most cost-effective ways to be able to move, to revitalize different activities, to be able to enhance the school. It's kind of a ground up, it's a ground up approach, and as opposed to being a top down. And I was thinking, private schools, they can, hire people to, take student initiatives and just kind of run with them and really overdevelop them, and maybe even take them out of the hands of the kids while they do that, but they come up with glorious results. But this is something, it takes a special somebody to be able to take a student initiative and to be able to cultivate it and develop it. And so I just have a simple recommendation, for a policy consideration. I only make copies for everybody, but I make copies for most people here. And I just put this for your consideration. It's very simple. It just said, and I'll read it, okay? It says a procedural or policy consideration for intermediate or high school student initiatives. And it goes as follows. Intermediate or high school students who elicit advisorship from a faculty member or a school-based club or for a school-based club or initiative that is within that faculty member's specialization, that faculty member is responsible to place the student with an advisor whose specialization qualifications match or exceed those of the approached faculty member, or that faculty member is responsible to refer the student to the district's department supervisor for follow-up. Basically, being if a student at Edison or whatever school, if I'm a faculty member and a student comes to me saying, I'm an expert in X, I teach X at the school, okay? And this student says, I want to start an X club, And I'm like, well, I don't got time, I got a job after school, I got all these other commitments, blah, blah, blah. I can't just let that die, okay? I can't just say, well, here's somebody who does Y, and, we'll put you with the guy over here, faculty member does Y, and, good luck. No, he's got to go to his other ex-colleagues who teach X at the school and say, hey, I got this kid a student approached me who wants to run an X club, and can you, you like I teach X, can you please, take this club on or meet with the student to talk about it? Seems like a very logical thing to do, okay? And then if they, for whatever reason, they're all busy at that particular school, it needs to be bumped up to the department supervisor, who then might take it to another school, say if it's an Edison thing, might take it to the Roosevelt, go to the Roosevelt ex-faculty and say, hey, we got this kid over at Edison who wants to run an X club. Can we do something maybe, at Edison Roosevelt X Club, make it a joint thing, maybe once a month they meet at Edison, once a month they meet at Roosevelt, whatever, something to that effect. It just seems to me like that would be a way to kind of keep that forward momentum, instead of having things kind of be sort of left to die a slow, painful death. And so, anyway, before I left Westfield, I wanted to make this statement about this, because it really has kind of been bothering me since November, and I'm just, again, just wanted to make this statement. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Greg Casco, 434 Everson Place. I'm here tonight on the heels of my neighbor, Greg Lemberg, who had come to a meeting, I believe the last meeting, and he had addressed the Board of Education. Specifically, I think he had asked Mr. Matesich if he knew the status of the Kaler Lights program. And I'm just taking this from the Westfield Leader. He said he did not know the status of the program right now. I have a couple questions, only because I'm a neighbor of that stadium, your neighbor. And I'm asking tonight, a week later, I guess, is there any update on the status of that pilot program?
Sure. So first of all, the Leader article, obviously that was a misquote. Nobody on the board sat here and said we don't know the status of the program. There was no reason to call the Leader and ask them to correct that. I think it was obvious on its face that that was just a misstatement. But what I did say last week, I believe, to Mr. Lembaugh, was that the pilot program had been subject to a litigation by you, and that the time to appeal that litigation hadn't ended yet, and therefore we hadn't done anything as a board in public, and the Facilities Committee was waiting the period of the appeal to end, and that ended after the last board meeting. So that's what I said, and I think that's pretty clear on understanding what the status of the program was. In terms of next steps, I may have said this last week, the Facilities Committee will meet in July. We agreed to do that at our last Facilities Committee meeting on Friday. We'll review all the comments, questions, how the program ran, feedback from neighbors, and then we will make a report to the board, probably, although I wouldn't say definitely, but probably at our first meeting in September. There, in my mind, wouldn't be any reason to delay it, but we'll see how our meeting goes in July. If we have follow-up from our July meeting, we always have August. So I'm just picking the date of the next board meeting, which you can look at the published calendar. I believe it's September 1st.
Okay.
So that's where we are.
One of the reasons why I did wait was because of that appeal period, which is over. I had no intentions of appealing it. Basically, the way I see it, the status of that program is it's over for now, for the spring 10-week pilot program. On the heels of that, I have a couple other questions I'd like to ask. Earlier this year, I'd made a request for emails regarding the Kaler Lighting Project, or pilot, through an Open Public Records Act. And I requested emails between the Board of Education, the Town of Westfield, the WSA. I was given almost 240 pages worth of emails. A lot of them were duplicate. One email in particular that I'm looking for, and I guess I'll have to put another request in. Dana Sullivan had emailed Jim Gilday from the Town of Westfield back on March 11th. And I'll read it verbatim. It said, "Hi Jim, good morning. As you can imagine, we had quite the lively meeting last night discussing the proposal for lights at Kaler." I'm assuming she's referring to the meeting that we had at the high school that night. Quote, "We finally got to the budget discussion about midnight. See email below from Rich. Can you meet with Rich and me tomorrow at 8 a.m. to discuss, and whomever else might be needed from your office? I have also attached a letter from the neighbors claiming that we are violating the municipal land use ordinances related to question number 1 below." First question I had was, did that meeting ever take place with the administrator? No?
No.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was, there was an email that was obviously missing from my Oprah request that I believe was from Mr. Matesich to, I guess, Mrs. Sullivan. So I'd hate to have to ask for another Oprah request, but that was the one I was looking for. Most of my questions have been answered since there was no meeting. Can I ask this board when the green screening that was put up on the fencing and the back of the bleachers on the visitor side be removed? Is that something that's going to remain?
That's something that the Facilities Committee will talk about in July.
Okay. So basically, the Facilities Committee is going to be talking about this pilot being either a success or a failure based on a bunch of different variables that you offered up. I had asked this question along with my neighbor Greg Lemberg a couple different times, and the Board of Education had never come out with any set of standards that you'll be using to measure the success or failure of this project. Will you be issuing any kind of a report, any kind of a summation of what went on so that we can take a look at it as residents?
I just said the Facilities Committee will meet in July. We'll meet publicly, probably on September 1st, and the committee will report its findings to the board. You're more than welcome to attend.
No, I will, but I'm just asking, is there any report that will be issued as a result of that meeting of the Facilities Committee?
I don't know. The committee will discuss the project, as I mentioned, and if it makes sense to produce a report, we will.
Okay.
If it makes sense to have a verbal report, we'll do that, as we often do.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to remind this Board of Education, when this lighting project or pilot was presented to the Board of Ed back in the early spring, the WSA garnered the support of your Westfield High School athletic director. And I believe one of the things that was said was that this would benefit the high school athletic teams, this lighting pilot. As far as I know, not one high school team used that field under the lights. Apparently, it was also a pilot program between the WSA and a lacrosse association. I'm not sure how many nights the lacrosse association used the field as well. Over time, those lights had to be lowered. I think the dimly lit field caused some issues with other teams, such as lacrosse practicing. I do have a neighbor whose daughter is 13 years old, plays for the WSA, and amongst her and some of her teammates, they were quoted as saying these lights were useless. There might be others that would say no, that they weren't. In closing, and it was interesting that Jenny Leitz had stated earlier that we have not been specific in our assessments when you were talking about creating a position, a new position, Director of Development. You were never specific in any of the criteria that you were going to use to measure the success or failure of this program.
You sued us, Greg. We stopped talking in public.
No, I didn't sue you. What I did was I filed a complaint in court. I was not looking for any monetary damages. In fact, had it been a different outcome, I think the request was going to be for $1. As far as I'm concerned, and I did not appeal, I'm not going to sit here and litigate the case. It's over with.
Right, but I don't want you to sit here and make comments out of context that
What comment did I make out of context?
Well, for example, you brought up an email that you didn't receive in an Oprah request. So
What I will
you
do
can-
is,
No, I'm still-
to
I'm still
clarify
talking
that
here.
email, I'll
No,
request it.
Right, you will, that would be how you would get it, right? You can follow the process just like everybody else. What happened between the two meetings at the high school, as you well know, I believe you gave a letter to Mr. Kaplow that had all sorts of stated violations of the board. I believe you, among other residents, asked the board to look again at whether or not we needed, for example, a permit from the zoning board. We said we didn't. We said we would check with the town. That's the context around the mysterious email. Simply asking Jim Gilday to reconfirm that we don't need a permit or go to the zoning board or anything else with respect to the lighting program at Keeler Field. That's it.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I just want to clarify one thing you said. The letter that was handed to that Board of Education that night, and I handed it directly, I believe, to Dana, I'm not sure. I did specifically state that I did not write that letter, that that letter was on behalf of a neighbor that wrote it. Even though it was unsigned, it was clearly made that night.
Right.
So I don't want you to insinuate that I cited all of those violations, because I only cited
all I
3.
said- I'm saying
Can I
you-
finish, please?
Yep, absolutely.
I cited 3 that I issued in municipal court, not the ones, or not all the extra ones that a neighbor had cited in that letter, just to be clear.
Well, just to be clear, all 3 of yours were summarily dismissed by a judge, and all the ones in the letter were equally would have been dismissed, and all we did as a board was give you additional clarity on the issues that you were raising. That's all that happened.
Okay.
Thank you.
Once again, I asked before, and I'll ask again. I was hoping that the Board of Education would set some standards to which we could look to
Right.
on how you will gauge the success or failure of this program.
Right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? All right. Seeing no one come to the podium, I would ask the board to approve the following resolutions. Resolved that the Board of Education move into private session for the purpose of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, personnel, pending or anticipated litigation, and pending or anticipated contract negotiations. And be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Could I have a second? Jenny, thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Any abstentions? We are in private session.